We appreciate you joining us on this webinar. I'm sure some of you already know about Regfyl, so to be very brief, we are an all-in-one platform for AML and compliance in Africa. We are able to help our customers simplify their AML, fraud prevention, and regulatory compliance requirements. The way that we do that is we support our customers across the entire compliance lifecycle, from onboarding, where we provide customer screening and company screening, to our transaction monitoring engine, which we built as a proprietary transaction engine, and then to regulatory reporting, so where our customers have a consolidated view of all their compliance obligations. If you want to hear a bit more about, please reach out to us, hello@regfyl or babatunde@regfyl.com. Now, to the order of the day, let's talk about this report that we spent a lot of time and effort trying to draw out these insights. First thing I want to do is just talk about the methodology for how we gathered this information. What we did is we asked one key question. Everyone who participated, which is, what is the biggest challenge you are facing on a day-to-day basis in your AML and CFT compliance in Nigeria today? The target profile of the people that we were reaching out to were individuals who are holding key roles in compliance, risk management, and regulatory affairs across various financial institutions in Nigeria. That includes commercial banks, microfinance banks, fintech companies, and capital market operators. The way that we collected this data was exclusively via LinkedIn. We reached out to the target profiles on LinkedIn via direct messaging. The sample size, we reached out to over 300 people. Not everybody responded. I think there's a number of people that responded that are on this call. Thank you so much. 134 people responded. That's about 44% of the people who we reached out to. It was open for a 4-week period, and so it was a 1-month engagement period. We continued to engage with the participants, encouraging thoughtful and comprehensive responses. We had follow-up conversations with certain individuals. We did messaging and also via video calls, and this helped us to provide deeper insights into the specific challenges and to clarify any ambiguities that we saw in the responses. The way that we analyzed the data was a mix of quantitative and qualitative analysis. The quantitative was to understand the prevalence of specific challenges, while for the qualitative, it was to extract detailed insights and actionable recommendations. We then analyzed and cross-referenced this against industry reports to make sure that we were on the right track, and also regulatory guidelines. This multi-layered approach enabled us to produce a report that we think reflects both the real-world experiences of professionals in Nigeria and also provides practical insights for improving compliance practices. I have to say that we did have some limitations, and it's important that we call that out. Obviously, this methodology relies heavily on self-reported LinkedIn data. This also means that it might not necessarily represent the view of the entire industry professionals, and especially those that are not active on social media. So not everybody has a LinkedIn profile. Also important to call out is that because it was self-reporting, this also creates the risk of response bias. For instance, people might reflect their aspirations rather than their actual practices. However, despite these limitations, we feel that this LinkedIn-driven insights offer a valuable perspective on AML compliance in Nigeria. The first section that we looked at was effectively what are the key regulatory events that have happened since January 2023. We identified 13 of them, and these have been significant events. The top 4, in my personal opinion, number 1 was the FATF grey listing of Nigeria in February 2023. That's the Financial Action Task Force. That has created seismic effects across the entire industry, and that happened in February of last year. The next and linked to that was the launch of the National AML CFT strategy in March of 2023. That was also a very important event. And then linked to that was then the CBN taking action against a number of microfinance banks, primary mortgage banks, and finance companies in May of 2023, where effectively about 140 or so of them had their license revoked. I think that kind of flows from specific challenges that they were having with their AML and compliance obligations. In February of 2024, CBN then took action against licensed BDCs as well. Those were 4 key regulatory actions that happened over the last 18 months. We also saw a rush of KYC-related CBN guidance notes. We had the ones on ultimate beneficial owners. We had the ones on politically exposed persons. And then we had the ones on tier 1 wallets and the profiling on the ICAD database with NIBs. These were some of the regulatory events that happened majorly by CBN, but SEC wasn't left out. The Securities and Exchange Commission also put out its framework on the Accelerated Regulatory Incubation Program. This was for the onboarding of virtual asset service providers. And so there was a lot of stuff that happened, and that kind of flows into what the industry challenges that we identified in our survey. The challenges that we identified range from a number of different things. I mentioned that the point about the regulatory changes, that was one of the biggest things. 22% of the people who responded to the survey said that keeping up with regulatory changes and the complexity around it is one of their biggest challenges. The respondents specifically said that they struggle with the rapidly changing regulations, they struggle with interpreting and implementing new rules, and they struggle with managing compliance across multiple jurisdictions. Finally, they said that the challenges in implementing new regulations also exist because of the time frames that they have to implement these changes. Keeping up with regulatory changes was a big challenge that was mentioned. Another one was identifying politically exposed persons. Even though we know that this sits more broadly within KYC, we brought that out because it was something that was always recurring. Respondents said that there was a lack of comprehensive centralized PEP database in Nigeria, and that was creating problems for them. They had difficulty in identifying relatives and close associates of PEPs, as most of the people on the call will know that the PEP is not just the primary individual, but also their relatives and close associates. They also identified challenges in determining the PEP status of Nigerians in the Nigerian context. 18% of the people who responded charged that as one of their biggest challenges. The next was around technology and tools. Respondents to the survey highlighted the fact that there was a lack of efficient tools for compliance processes. The people who did use technology saw a high rate of false positives in screening and monitoring systems, especially when you have legacy systems. There were issues around implementing legacy systems with new systems. So these were the things that people that identified challenges in the technology space said. As I mentioned, technology was a big challenge. Linked to technology is data quality and management. Respondents to the survey said that there were issues around inaccurate or incomplete customer information, and that is really around how the data is gathered. There were difficulties in verifying the information that the customers provided because unfortunately sometimes the customers lie. And so there's no way to verify what they've actually said is the case. There's also the issue of the lack of standardization of data collection and storage across multiple organizations, especially people that have different operating entities. Obviously, we're seeing things around privacy and compliance challenges. We have the new DPB and its requirements. And so a lot of people are seeing that privacy is becoming more and more important around data quality and management. Finally, we go back to KYC again. We had issues around difficulties in verifying customer addresses, and that's a big thing. I know that the CBN has also very recently been making a big fuss about that as well. So it's something that's important that people are seeing. Verifying customer addresses, the challenges in identifying ultimate beneficial owners, especially when you have a situation where the business customer that is owned by one of the shareholders is another company, it's difficult for them to identify the ultimate beneficial owners. We saw resistance from customers in providing the required documentation, and also the difficulties in verifying information for non-resident customers. Those were some of the issues that we saw around customer due diligence and KYC processes. There's also a very important thing around, and about 14% of the people identified this as an issue, which is around balancing the need between compliance requirements and business objectives. Some of the respondents said that stakeholders perceive compliance as a business killer, that there's pressure from management to streamline compliance processes, but then they don't want that to affect growth targets. The back and forth between the business and compliance is something that a number of people identified. Finally, I'll come to continuing professional development and training issues. A number of professionals have said that there's limited budget for compliance activities. I think that's linked to the point that some people say that compliance is a cost center, and so they don't necessarily want to put more costs into the cost centers. We have limited budget for compliance activities. We have difficulties in finding and retaining skilled compliance staff because it is a skill, it's a profession that you have to train and be well skilled in that regard. There are also difficulties in finding specialized training programs, and there's challenges in retaining the skilled compliance staff that you have. Those are some of the challenges that were identified in the survey. Obviously, this is very high level, and when you get the survey, you'll be able to see in more detail. Once again, thank you to everyone who contributed to the survey. Hope you find it useful in your day-to-day task in compliance.